You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years.
This podcast is fueled by Eukanuba, the official performance dog nutrition partner of UKC.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Domenick Moyo. I am the program manager for Hunt Tests and Field Trials here at the United Kennel Club. And today I get the pleasure of sitting down with Will Heckart. Will is a very active member in our Shed Dog program. And we haven't gotten to do a lot of episodes on Shed Dog, but it's one of our faster growing segments. It's open to a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different breeds of dogs. And so I wanted to sit down with him today and kind of talk to him about what it was like getting started in this sport, coming up from it, learning about it, and having dogs compete in it, and learn about what it would take for any of you guys listening. If you've got a dog that you like to walk through the woods with and find antlers, how you could get into this sport. So, Will, if you don't mind, introduce yourself a little bit and give us some of your background in shed hunting in general and the sport.
Okay, my name's Will Heckart. I'm from Southern Iowa. I've lived here my entire life. And when most people think of Southern Iowa, they think of the outdoors and they think of hunting. And I'm no different. I was raised by a family that hunted rabbits and squirrels and raccoons. And then later in my life, I got into, hunting ducks, hunting deer. And I always wanted a trained lab for a duck dog. And I didn't think that I could do it myself. And so I thought I would buy one. Well, I got to looking at the price of them and decided I could do it myself. And so I started out to train my first dog. And he was just as good of a dog as I was a trainer, which was so-so. And so then when it come time to get my next dog, I started to research and breed bloodlines, and I started reading, and I kind of developed my own training style and decided I'd do it myself. And so I started training for ducks and pheasants. And then naturally, being in Southern Iowa, we've always done a little shed hunting, but it's always been just for fun. It's been for something to do in the spring in between the time of ice fishing's over and mushroom season hasn't started. And so, we'd go out and find them. And I kind of read some articles about it. I thought, boy, I can do this with my dog and have something else to do. And so I started in training my dog to do sheds. And I guess, kind of where I'm at today is history based upon that.
Okay. What was the name of your first shed dog?
My first shed dog is Pearl. Her actual name is Will's Classy Black Pearl, but she goes by Pearl. And she's the dog that I started out with, and kind of really how I really got pushed into the sport and the competition part was Pearl was not crazy about noise. And it's awful hard to hunt ducks or doves or pheasants with a dog that's not crazy about noise. And so I started her on the sheds and done shed work with her, and then competition. And then I took her back into the birds, and I pheasant hunt with her and dove hunt with her and duck hunt with her now. But she just needed something different to do to get her mind off of that noise. And once I done that and started in with the sheds, she really come to life and really likes it. I mean, her probably two favorite things is sheds and pheasants. And I think it's because she gets to get out and move. She doesn't have the patient level to sit and wait on the ducks.
Sure. I've got two dogs myself, and one, she's a lot more laid back, so she likes the whole duck hunt atmosphere. She's ready to go when we shoot some birds, but she's also calm enough to just sit there and be patient. And my other one is everything that I asked for, which is nothing that I wanted. She's just wide open. And so being out there constantly moving is better suited for her. She'll still sit in the duck blind, but she'll kind of shift back and forth, look around. But It's all about finding what those dogs enjoy and what their little corner or their little niche is. And it sounds like you did with Pearl. Tell me, how old was Pearl when you got her into shed hunting?
I started out, of course, I got Pearl as a puppy and raised her here at home. And then I started working with her, and she had all the foundation for the retrieving, the dummy, all the retrieving work, all the obedience work. And then I just replaced the bumpers with antlers, and then started in doing that with her. And when I took her to her first competition, she was almost 2 years old, year and a half, year and 3/4, before I took her to her first competition. And I may be a little bit different than most people, because I feel they're ready to go to competition when they're ready. If they're ready at 7 months, that's great. If it's 2 years or 3 years or 1 year, whatever, that's great. It's whatever their timeline is on their self. So as everybody says, you got to train the dog in front of you, and when I feel that they're ready, that's when we take them. So. And it did just work out. That's kind of when I found about the competitions and got to take her to competition too.
Perfect. So when you talk about your first competition, walk me through, put me in your shoes a little bit for your very first shed dog event with the Elite Shed Dog Series.
So my first UKC Elite Shed Dog Series event was in Kansas, and I had attended another organization's shed dog event, so I wasn't new to the competition aspect of it. I was new to the UKC aspect of it, and traveling, 8 hours to an event to see people that I'd talked to on the phone once, had only been to maybe 2 competitions ever, and my first shed competition was my first dog competition, because we hunted. We didn't go to competitions. And so it was a little nerve wracking to go to these competitions, and especially that 8 hour drive and thinking about it and trying to decide what you was going to do, and then getting there. And once I got there, the anxiety all left, the nervousness left, because it was such a welcoming club that was putting on the event, and everybody there was very welcoming. And I don't get nervous anymore to go places, to events, because I know when you go to these UKC events, they're some of the most welcoming events that you can go to. And I've been involved in different things throughout our community. I've been involved in antique tractors, and I've been involved in competitive bass fishing and things like that. So I've been in different situations, different places, and I've never been anywhere like going to a UKC event and the welcoming feeling that you get when you go to one.
Well, we love to hear that. We definitely strive to have a good welcoming and still have that competitive nature to it. Have that community that's nice and balanced and is always looking to grow and bring new people in. Now, for people who are listening that might not understand or might not know about the Shed Dog program, there's actually 2 classes you can run a dog in. You have your working, which is kind of like your entry level class, and then you have your champion, which is the highest level of competition. When you brought Pearl to our first UKC event, did you start off in working, or was she ready for champion about that time?
I actually started in working, more for the aspect of my benefit instead of hers, because I didn't think I was as confident a handler as what I could be. And so, like I said, that was my first UKC, and I think I'd been to 2 other of another organization's events. So my third event ever, I just didn't feel I was ready. So I went ahead and entered her in working, and took her to a couple, 3 different working events. That was in 2019, leading into 2020. And then we know what happened. Everything got canceled in 20 because of COVID. So what I was going to do is I was going to keep her into the working, because it was November, my first event. I went to an event in Iowa in the spring and was going to go to nationals. Gideon Fuchs in Kansas had convinced me that I needed to go to nationals, that Pearl was good enough to go, and I was a good enough handler. I needed to go. And so, yep, I'm going. And then everything got canceled. So it's kind of a funny end to my first year.
Sure. Now, to reiterate on the different levels of the shed dog program for our listeners, for the main difference between working and champion is the number of sheds a dog needs to pick up. So with the working class, there's 5 antlers planted in 6 imaginary blocks on a course about the size of a football field. It might be in the woods, it might be in a cut cornfield, it might be a moderately covered field, or a mix of both. And so for working, the dog just needs to pick up 4 of the 5 planted antlers within a 15-minute time period. When you move up to champion, now your dog has to find every antler that's planted out in this course, and the plants become a little bit more difficult, a little bit more technical. Now, when we're talking about plants, I kind of want to use that as a segue to speak with Will a little bit on training. How do you go about training for working or for champion on your free time? Because I know you're not a full time trainer. You're going out there. You're using what little time you can to work your dogs. What does that look like for someone who wants to get into the sport? What should they do to get their dog ready for shed dog tests?
Well, one of the things that we hear a lot from people is, I don't have time to train my dog. And I find that to be a very hard pill to swallow, as you will, because it does not take a lot to train your dog. If you've got a dog that's willing to work, if you've got a breed that's willing to retrieve, and it's willing to please you, and you've bonded with it, you can spend 10 to 20 minutes a day. Shoot, sometimes I spend 5 minutes a day with my dogs, just work on simple things. But like I said, I started Pearl out with bird work, with obedience work, with retrieving work. And then I just replaced that bumper with that antler, doing retrieves. Then I went ahead and I just transitioned that antler out into the yard. And I put 2 or 3 out in the yard and take her outside, and I'd give her command to hunt for the antler, and she would go look for the antler, and we'd find him. Then we progressed to a little heavier cover up in the hayfield. Then we progressed to a little heavier cover into the waterway. Then we progressed into some woods and some brush. Personally, when I progressed out of the yard and out of just the easy stuff into where she's actually using her nose and her eyes, I always practice with 5 antlers. I never did just practice with 4 antlers. I always just practiced with 5, looking ahead. You may not believe it, but I've heard guys say, I think my dog can count. I think my dog knows when it's hit the 4 and then it quits, or I've transitioned from working up to champion, and we're used to picking at 4 and it finds 4 and then it quits. It don't want to find that 5th one. So I never give my dogs an opportunity to learn to count unless they're counting to 5.
Makes sense. So your format, you kind of, that dog's already got drive to pick something up. You're just kind of planting a couple antlers in the yard, making sure that she'll go around, pick them up, bring them back, want to look for them. Then as you start to transition, you were talking about the different covers and everything. Are you more or less setting up a mock test, or are you kind of peppering one specific area so she's finding a lot of success and she's eager to go out and hunt? Are you spreading them out more than what the courses look like for a shed dog test, or are you mixing it up? What does your setup look like a little bit?
So if you ever spend a whole lot of time talking to me, or if you see any comments that I might make on somebody's post on Facebook, one of the things that I say, and I hope I didn't steal it from anybody else, was train for success. So I always want to set my dog up for success. So even from the very beginning of putting those antlers in the yard, where they're easy, where they can see them, obviously smell them, I'm using the approved scent on them. And then when I progress, I'm going to progress, if I'm going to go to a shed test, to a regulation size course. So it just so happens I have one field up here that is fenced off, and it is actually within a couple yards, plus or minus, of being a regulation 50 by 100 course. I take fence posts up, I set courses up in hayfields, in waterways, in the timber, wherever I can to train. If I'm going to competition, if I'm just shed hunting the shed hunt, I'll scatter them out. I'll take and make it more like a real life shed hunt rather than a competition shed hunt, because it really is two different things.
What's your transition like a little bit, from the competition side of it to the actual pleasure shed hunting? Are you, I would assume it's kind of like us duck hunters. If you go on a duck hunt, generally it's almost a golden rule to bring a bumper with you because you don't know what that day is going to look like and you want to be able to do something with the dog. Do you do a little bit of that, like if you're going on a wild shed hunt and you just, bring an extra shed with you so you can toss one, or is that frowned upon because you don't want the dog to walk past one, then you drop it, then you're like, hey, you missed it over here? Or what do you do if you're going on a wild shed hunt that you don't do if you're going training?
So obviously, from speaking early in the conversation, I do more than sheds. I do birds, I do ducks, I do pheasants, I do doves, do the antlers. And these dogs are smart enough to know the difference of what's going on. So when I go and I get my orange vest out and I go to the gun safe and I pull out my gun that I'm going to go pheasant hunting with, Pearl knows what's going on. She knows we're going pheasant hunting. Just like when I start getting stuff out, antlers out for practice or training, get my whistle on, get that stuff ready, she knows that we're going to go up and do sheds. And she knows just as well when you load up and you go in the truck and you drive 8 hours, you're at a competition. She has a natural switch that she can flip and go, she can do whatever she wants to do with you that day. When we're going and transitioning from competition to wild shed hunting, obviously the pace is not nearly as fast. You've been paying attention to some of the boards that we've been seeing, and we've had some awful fast times on some competition. You can't take a dog wild shed hunting and expect them to run that fast and have any kind of life left in them after 10 minutes if they're going to run that hard. So they got to figure out, hey, this pace is going to be slower. We're going to go easy. We're going to take it slower. And they just naturally seem to figure that out. And as far as the training antler, yeah, I'll take a training antler. And it was way more important on those first hunts when they're starting to pick up their first wild shed. And I usually hunt with a partner, and I'd keep that training antler in the pickup. And I'd tell him, we haven't found anything today. Slip back to the pickup and go out in that cornfield and throw that to the left of the corn row between the road ditch. And we're going to walk her through there and let her find an antler and be successful. So everything that I try to do, I try to set it up to be successful so that they can find them. And, you find your first wild shed. If you see it before the dog sees it, let the dog find it. Walk that dog around and let them be successful and find that antler. It's so important for them to pick up those wild sheds.
Absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit about your transition from working to champion, because I do know there's a good number of people in the shed dog community who do bypass working. Their dog's ready for it. They move straight on to champion. And so if somebody's listening and they already go out wild shed hunting with their dog and their dog knows how to pick up antlers and they go, maybe I just go on to champion. What's your transition like from working to champion?
I think one of the biggest transitions is remembering that fifth antler. I think sometimes people get to where they don't remember that there's 5, and they really push and get 4, and then they waste a little time looking for that 5th one because they've kind of forgot about it. The actual transition, if like me doing working, moving up to champion, I didn't think the transition was hard. Some of the plants, like you said earlier, may be a little bit more technical. Obviously, in the champion class, you can even partially cover up to 3 antlers. So you may run into that situation where working, they weren't maybe quite as hard of a plant. So maybe your time does run a little bit longer. And I don't like it when people get discouraged when they go to champion, because they'll see some of these handlers that's been doing this since the inception, and they'll see them running a minute 30, a minute 40. 2 minutes, and these people that are just starting out, they may run a 5 or 6 minute time, and they're upset because they didn't run 2 minutes. That stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for the dog to figure out what's going on and you to figure out what's going on. And so it's just, a lot of it is just do it, and everything will fall into place, and all the speed and the faster times and stuff all follow along with it.
It's like that adage, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Just slowly getting the mechanics down, and
Exactly.
the more familiar you are with it, things just kind of progress through that. Let's
Yeah, and that's something that I was just going to say, that's something that you see is just trying to get through the courses, and sometimes people will get, like you say, a little scatterbrained and not remember where they're at. So if they just slow down and things go smoother, things just go easier and better, and then your times progress from there.
let's talk to the listeners a little bit about, coming to your first shed hunt, or maybe it's not your first. What's some of the advice that you have from the second you pull into the parking lot or the second you pull up to the headquarters for an event? What are some things that you're constantly keeping in mind that might be overlooked to somebody new to the sport?
I think sometimes people have a tendency to pull themselves away from everybody and want to stay with their truck or their vehicle with their dog and not make friends. And that can be one of your biggest mistakes. You're there for fun, you're there for the competition, but you're there to meet people. And like I said, this community of shed dog people is such a welcoming group of people that you need to get out and you need to meet people. And if you have questions, I tell everybody, if you have questions, ask them. There's not a dumb question. And I mean, we've been told that since we were kids. If you got a question, ask. And it's true in these dog sports. You go up, hey, where's this? What do I do here? Where do I go here? Can you help me? Yes. Yeah, this is what you need to do. One of the things that took me by surprise, and it may take a newcomer by surprise, is you go up to the running order of the board and you see names like Pearl, Kate, Pixel, Tundra, and you're going, who's that? Well, it's dog names. It's not people's names. So now you're having to learn which person goes with which dog. And that seems to make things even more fun, because now, oh, geez, I know who Tundra's owner is, and I got to talk to Tundra's dad, or I got to talk to Pixel's mom, or something like that, so that you get to be around these people, and you make friends quite well and easily within this community. But never be afraid to ask anybody, and that goes along with your judges. And that's something that I always did, and people really act surprised when I tell them this. I'd get done with a run, and I'd say to the judge, "What'd you see? What did you see that I didn't see?" Okay, I run a 5-minute time, and boy, I think I should have been faster than that. What did I do? What did I do something wrong? Can you give me some advice to help me speed up? What could I do? And I do hear that when I judge, that some people will ask that. Some people don't think about it, but a lot of people will ask, "What'd you see?" or "What'd you think?" Well, I think you walked round and round in circles in block 1 after you'd already found the antler. You didn't get into block 2, 3, or 4, or whatever the case may be, whatever piece of advice. But that judge walking behind you can be a great source of information. And there's not a one of them that won't help you and give you some information on your run when you're done.
Sure. A lot of our judges in the sport are extremely well experienced in it. They've been doing it a while, or they've just seen a lot of things from judging, and that does make them a really good resource. And especially given the nature of the sport, the gallery's not really getting any, if even a minuscule look at the course or at dogs running or how you're handling the dog. And so they're not a good resource to ask, "Hey, what did I do wrong here?" And no one else is really walking with you other than maybe a shed planner. So if you don't reach out to a judge after your run and say, "Hey, I know you got another dog coming. I won't take up too much of your time, but I'd really like to discuss my run with you if you got a minute when you're done." A lot of those judges would love to do that with you, and they'd have really good insight to help you improve that you wouldn't be able to catch, and really no one else is going to know how your run went besides them. So that's really good advice right there, is to use that judge as a resource.
Yeah, the first 2 judges that I was really around a whole lot that I asked those questions to, 2 big names in the sport, Jeff Rada and Norm Henderson. And I got done with the run. Jeff, what did you see? Oh, you could have done this or that. I said, Jeff, don't mess with me. I follow the sport. I see your name. I know how well you run. Tell me what I did or didn't do. And Jeff and I instantly become friends at that minute. And Norm Henderson was another one when I first started. I'd be like, Norm, what'd you see? What do you think I should do? Well, I don't know what you could have done better. You run this good a time, and I'd be happy if I was you. Or Norm would say, well, maybe you should have done this or that. And so those two guys really helped me right off at the beginning, and I've always remembered that, and I always try to help people when I'm judging if they have questions, and try to reciprocate the information onto them that Norm and Jeff helped me with.
Sure. Now I do want to segue and continue to progress down the line, if you will, about we've got Larking, we've talked a little bit about Champion. Now let's talk about one of our upcoming events that's happening towards the end of March here, the Shed Dog Nationals, right? So you've been a Shed Dog Nationals judge, you've been there a few times. What is your experience for Nationals? Kind of paint the picture for some of our listeners about what it's like to go there as a competitor.
It's absolutely the best of the best. Everybody that's anybody is going to be there. The best dogs in the country and Canada are going to be there. We have competitors from Canada now. The sport has grown so much. We've got clubs from coast to coast, Canada to Florida, I believe, and Texas. So it's not like you're going into a regional event or regional tournament. This is a national, and I guess we could say an international event at this point. It can be nerve-wracking. You need to go in with the idea that I'm going to go in and make 3 clean runs as fast as I can because it's an average, and go in with a good attitude, go in prepared, make sure you've been training and traveling and got your dog ready to go, and enjoy yourself. Go in and run your runs, run every run like it's the best run you're ever going to make, and the chips will fall well they may, and we're going to crown a national championship.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite things about National is the youth. We've got a pretty robust youth program within the sport, and so there's a lot of young kids out there, and Shed Dog Nationals kind of brings all of those kids together. I think last year we had near 20 youth competing, and so being able to see the future of the sport's pretty neat. So that's personally one of my favorite things. And I think, didn't you judge some of our youth a couple of years ago?
So I have been there as a competitor and as a judge. So I judged nationals last year, so I did get an opportunity to judge working and the youth.
What did you enjoy the most about those kids?
I tell you what, there's not a bad kid in the whole group, but there's kids that stick out in your mind. Emma Selby from Missouri, at Nationals 2 years ago, her and I hit it off, and she actually gave me a bow to wear in my hair for Nationals. Emma always wears a hair bow, and so I wore that clear through Nationals, and her and I become friends over that, and then to be able to watch her progress as a handler through the youth and do so well was so great. 2 years ago, last year judging, of course we had wet conditions, and 2 kids that stood out in my mind, and I mean, I'm sorry if I'm naming names and not naming other names, but the 2 kids that really left a mark on me is the 2 Meadows boys. It was muddy, it was wet, it was deep, and I was telling Zach Meadows, I said, Zach, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to stay as close to you as I can. It's wet, it's muddy. I said, people have been falling down. Be careful. And I said, we'll get through this and have a good fast run. And the young man turned and looked at me and he says, Will, I'll take care of you. You don't worry. He says, you say retrieved. He says, if you're not right with me, I'll hold on the antler. He says, we'll get it done. We'll take care of it. And I said, okay, thank you. And he went and he had a good run. And then his brother Roger come in, and he's got a little dog named Belle, and he calls her Stell Bell. And it's funny because he comes in and he gets her to the line and he takes the leash off of her and he clips the leash and he hands it to me. And I said, did you want me to carry that, Roger? Yes, please. And so I threw his leash over my neck, and he stopped right there on that line before we got ready. And he gave his dog a hug and a kiss, and he talked to her and told her how much he loved her and let's go. And I'm not going to lie, it choked me up just watching him interact with his dog. And then we took off, and they had a good, successful nationals too. So, you get these kids that touch you, not only with their good runs, but with their dogs and their personalities. And it's fun. It really is.
Yeah, there's such good young men and young women in that program, and it's so exciting to see them evolve as handlers as well. Um, one of our judges for this year's nationals, Zoe Rada, Jeff Rada's daughter, she came up through the youth program. She's been a competitor for years, and here she is judging nationals. So it's something special to see how much of a mark this sport has on everyone involved, but especially the youth.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, Zoe may have been the very youngest judge when she got her judge's card from the beginning. I mean, after she went through the youth program and then got to be old enough. I think she may have been the youngest person to have her card. And you may think it's funny. She's got more experience on a course than I've got. And I've asked Zoe questions. I've judged her and asked her a question afterwards. Why did you do that way? And well, I've done it because of this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see why you done it. I was watching it, but I watched it. I thought I knew why she done what she done, and then she explained it, and I'm like, yeah, that's perfect, makes perfect sense. So you can learn something from everybody, and that's, like I said, to go back to, don't be afraid to ask somebody a question.
Alan, I know we both have new Dogtra Pathfinder 2s. How are you liking yours so far?
I'm liking it. I've even had the opportunity now to use mine where I didn't have service, where I download the map of that area, and it works flawlessly. Love it.
I agree. I really like my Dogtra Pathfinder 2 as well. I've used it quite a bit the past few months. I really like the crystal clear maps. I like that it doesn't lose service very much, and I don't have many bad things to say about it at all. Dogtra Pathfinder 2, the official GPS collar partner of UKC.
Now, from the judging aspect of it, you've seen a lot of dogs run, not just nationals, but in general. I think one of the really unique things about the UKC shed dog sport is how welcoming it is to all breeds. It doesn't matter if it's just a lab, which a lot of the dogs in the sport are, but there's so many others that it's just a dog that loves to hunt, it loves to retrieve, and has found a little niche. So there's shepherds, there's healers, there's border collies, there's cockers, there's a lot of different breeds in it. And so it really highlights the fact that the sport is obtainable to a lot of individuals. And something I always find that's even more neat is a lot of the community in the nose work sport find good parallels in shed dog. And we started off talking about how you know I have two dogs. One's a lot more laid back in a duck blind. The other one really wants to be doing something. And so if people are listening and they're like, yeah, I like to do nose work, but you can tell my dog wants to do something more, be more active, move more, hunt a bigger area. Shed dog might be that sport. Um, what advice would you have for somebody who is starting off with, a non-lab or a non-retrieving breed? Do you have any advice for them on how to get their dog involved in sheds, or have you seen dogs that were a little bit reluctant to pick up a shed at first, and people work through that?
Well, like you say, we've seen all kinds of different breeds. There's some breeds that have been in the sport that are smaller dogs. I can't even tell you the name of the breed. I asked and they told me, but I don't remember what they were. And then, like you say, the transition from some of the nose work stuff, even dock diving stuff. This is such a crossover sport that you can do just about anything, with these dogs and make your dogs multi-purpose. I mean, we've got people that do, like you say, scent work, fast cat, dock diving, hunting, all these different things. And as long as you've got a dog that wants to please you, wants to be with you, and has a nose and will retrieve something to you, that's all you really need. And you can start out with your training scent on your bumper or your ball or whatever their favorite toy is, and transition into that antler with the scent, and then start hiding the antler and be very successful with it. We had a border collie that is in the Hall of Fame. Elite champion, Hall of Fame border collie. When that happened, everybody's like, "Geez, that's really something." And Kelly done a great job with Monty, and has really got him up and going good. And that's the way it is with all these dogs. If you've got a desire to work with them and they've got a desire to learn, there's no reason you can't take any dog that will pick something up and bring it to you and make them a shed dog.
Absolutely. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about the competitive side, and we're only briefly touched on wild shed hunting. I want to know when is the best time? I know a lot of it's regional, but if you had to give some sort of blanket statement for those people that might be listening, like our coonhound guys that are in the woods a ton, or our beagle guys that are also out there, what would you say is the best window for them to start keeping their eyes open for some bone?
Well, that's funny because we've been seeing reports from Christmas on of deer losing sheds, and I've got a camera out and I can't get to it. The snow's too deep, and I'm kind of old-fashioned. I don't use the cell cams. I still use the cards because it gives me something to do, to go pull the card and look and see what's going on. So I kind of try to keep track of it that way. Plus, driving back and forth and watching for deer losing antlers. But I would say primarily here in Iowa, February, mid-February, Valentine's Day, from then on to, through the spring. But we have guys that will find antlers all year round. I've got a really good friend that coon hunts, and when he's training in the fall, he'll show me a shed that he's found. And he'll find him in the spring too, find him out where he's been coon hunting. But I would say primarily here, Valentine's Day on through spring would be a good time to start looking. Most of the guys they're very serious about doing shed hunting, and shed hunting has gotten way more serious than it used to be. They're all running cell cams. They've got them on food plots and stuff, and they pretty well can tell you, within the hour when their target bucks or when the bucks they're watching are starting to lose their antlers.
Okay. Now, for someone like myself, I've been out in the woods some. I found a couple sheds here and there. But what's your advice for a guy like me that's mainly a duck hunter, that my dogs do like to retrieve and do like to hunt? What should I be looking for? Should I be scanning just as hard as my dogs are? Should I be looking for something bright, or am I going to end up going to every single twig I walk by? Or what's your advice for someone who wants to get into the sport?
Well, we all go chasing after that corn stalk that looks like an antler sticking up from the highway, that's for sure. And you see the sticks out in the timber that look like sheds. But I still find sheds on my own. The dogs find sheds. I feel like the dogs find the ones that I don't necessarily see. My ground that I have to hunt is a lot of alfalfa fields, hay fields, waterways, small little blocks of brushy timber. I don't have 1,000 acres that's being managed for deer. There are people that have the food plots to hunt, that know exactly where the deer are traveling to and from. I am not that way. I've got farm ground that we're haying and we're running cattle on. And, one of the biggest things for me is to get out and get through all the alfalfa fields with the dogs, so that when it comes time to spread fertilizer or bale hay, that we're not running antlers through rear tractor tires and ruining those, plus being down. So But, you've got your typical spots where the deer jump the fence. You've got your typical spots where they bed in a waterway or a cedar thicket, places like that, places where they cross creeks and jump over creeks. I found a couple antlers last year in an alfalfa field right out in the wide open. One of them I seen because I was driving along the edge. The other one I had Kate, which is my middle dog. I had her out and we were quartering that field, and I seen her spin just as hard as you could see a dog spin and reach her head down and pick it up and turn, and it was almost like she was smiling at me. And I hollered at her to bring it to me, and she come and brought it to me. I seen her pick one up out of a fence row that I probably never would have seen because there was enough tall grass, like canary grass, waterway grass along the fence row. She walked by, spun, turned, and picked it up. I would have never seen that one. So out of the three that come out of that field that day, I seen one of the three. So those dogs are picking up those antlers that we're not seeing, and they can cover so much more ground than we can cover. But we still need to have our eyes open. Some guys use binoculars. I take binoculars depending on the day. But one of the things I do really like is I can send them dogs across a ditch. I can send them over on a little hillside and let them work a hillside. And I don't have to try to figure out how I'm going to get down across that ditch and up the other side. And I'm pretty confident enough that if I send two dogs over there to run that hillside and they come back with nothing, there's nothing there. Just go on and go to the next spot. So all those spots, all the food plots, if you've got access to them, your bedding areas, your waterways. CRP is a great place to find them. I pheasant hunted the last weekend, and I'd never seen so many beds in CRP. And I will definitely be back to that spot to check for antlers here as soon as the snow goes off. So all those kinds of places, and you'll find antlers.
Have you ever, hearing you talk about how you kind of wild shed hunt, have you ever been out on a pheasant hunt and one of your dogs picked up a shed for you? I feel like there has to be the chances of it now.
So yeah, a couple years ago we were hunting a piece of public ground, Pearl and I was, and it was some pretty tall, thick canary grass where the area we was in. And she stays within gun range, and I seen her make a hard turn, and so I took a couple quick steps to get ready, and she was putting her mouth on a big deadhead, been an EHD deer or something that had died. And so I picked it up and well, she couldn't, it was still attached. It was still all attached to the skeleton and the backbone. She couldn't get it. So I got it ripped off of there and then called the DNR officer and talked to him about it before I took it. But, and then this fall, we were hunting, and this area has gotten hit hard by EHD this year. And we were going along, and I had Kate, and she made a hard turn, and I thought, well, that was a different turn than I was expecting. And I took a step, and she reached down and picked up a little spike that I'm assuming was an EHD deer. And he separated right away, and she picked it up, and I just left it. It still had some hide yet on it. It didn't smell the best, so I just left it for her. So we've picked up some dead heads. I've never had one of them just pick up an antler and bring it to me, but I know it does happen. I've heard guys talk about it and everything, but.
Sure. So I do want to ask you, because it's something I've heard. And again, I'm not heavy into shed hunting myself. I do it on occasion or go for a spring walk through some of our game lands. But what are your thoughts on, and have you ever heard of people talking about balloons? Have you ever heard that? Like wherever
Yeah.
a balloon is in the woods?
Yeah, I have.
What I hear is if you're walking the woods, you want to either set up a stand near where there's a balloon, or if you stand on a balloon you find in the woods and look around, you will find a shed. How much truth is there to that?
I have never picked up a balloon when I've been shed hunting or mushroom hunting or anything like that. I have seen some videos and stuff on Facebook and TikTok where they talk about the balloons, and I can't remember what the exact theory is. If it's something about that balloon falls there and that's supposed to be a good area for the deer to travel or bed or something. But there is some kind of a wives' tale about balloons.
The thing I heard, there could be so much hearsay, but I always hear it has something to do with low pressure. If that's where the balloon settled, it's an area of low pressure, and deer like to stay in areas of low pressure. And I don't know. I think there needs to be somebody with with more subject matter expertise to speak to the effectiveness of it. But I didn't know if while you've been in the woods, if you found any truth to that, because every time I walk through the woods, if I see a mylar balloon or something tucked off to the side, I'll stuff it in my pocket and I'll sit there and just scan intently. And I'm like, they say it has to be something here.
Yeah, and like I said, I knew there was some. I just couldn't remember what it was. But we have more pieces of silage bags blowing around our country than we do mylar balloons. So everybody does a lot of ag bagging here with silage or corn or hay, and so you have more pieces of that. And we tend to pick up stuff like that when we're out shed hunting if we find it. But yeah, that'd be a great theory. If that was the case, we could get our binoculars out, scan for balloons, and go pick up a truckload of sheds, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we close out, I do want to give you the chance to bring up any stories you have, whether it's your most memorable shed or your most memorable test with your dogs. I kind of want to give you the floor to bring any of that up.
Well, I tell you what, I think one of my most memorable hunt tests would have been my first UKC hunt down in Kansas. And like we talked about at the beginning of the show, I was so nervous to drive that far and go down there. And then I got down there and met Gideon and Danielle and their families and had a very good hunt, and have become very good friends with those two. And that's kind of been the beginning of my shed hunting career and learning to bond with people. And it kind of seems like I got a natural gift for bonding with people and becoming friends. And I've got friends all over the United States. So that's and Canada. So that's one. But probably my second, and maybe it's a tie. I don't know. Nationals 2022, went in and after the first two runs, I had two dogs in the top 10, Pearl and Kate both. Then we went to the banquet and, I didn't know about, that's where I was at until the banquet. And then, went to the banquet, won Ambassador of the Year, which in my mind is the most important award that we have, because it's voted upon by our peers. And, very emotional to get that award. Very emotional to have two dogs in the top 10. And then the next day to try to finish off our third run, I literally had to shut my phone off and put it in the truck because I was getting phone calls and texts from across the United States, people that weren't at nationals congratulating me, wanting to know how things was going. And when it was all said and done, I ended up with two in the top 10. Pearl ended up fourth and Kate ended up seventh, I believe. We just didn't quite have the win that day. But very, very emotional weekend. It was probably, one of my all-time favorites, if not my actual favorite memory of the shed hunting.
Now you've mentioned Pearl and Kate. Are those your go-to two dogs if you're going out for a wild shed hunt? You're bringing them as a pair, or do you have a third that you mix in there, or do you hunt them kind of independently?
Okay, Dominic, I did not hear any of that. You sounded like a robot. So if you can repeat that question for me.
Sure. So you mentioned Pearl and Kate. When you go wild shed hunting, are you hunting those two as a pair? Do you have a third dog that you throw a whole trio out there? Or are you hunting them independently?
So I do both. It depends on where I'm going and what I'm doing. But I'll take the two of them and hunt them together. And actually, last spring, I got a third one. I've got a dog named Belle, and she was too little to really know what she was doing, but she went along too, and she will be going this spring as soon as the snow comes off. She'll start out going to her first wild shed hunting. So I may not take the three of them together. I may back down and just have, Belle with either Pearl or Kate until I see how the interaction is going to go between them. But all indications is they'll all work fine together. They're around each other every day, and run and play and mess around. And I've done some training with all three of them together. So probably run them together, but may take them, depending on where I'm going. Maybe I'll take one day, one the next. It'll just depend what's going on for sure.
Gotcha. Well, I definitely wish you all the best of luck. I know I'll get to see you at Nationals if you're heading out there, and if you do any wild shed hunting between now and then, I hope you find enough to fill a truck bed.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to let some of the snow go off. Right now, you try to take a step and you're knee deep, so it's going to have some snow come off before I can go. And I'm sure that we've got some guys that are already out looking, but it's the snow's too much for me and the areas that I have to hunt. It's just not going to work out for a little bit. And as of right now, yes, I'm planning on being at Nationals. I'm not sure what capacity I'll be there in. Right now, I've only got one dog qualified, but I'll be there in some capacity anyway.
Well, fantastic. We look forward to having you, and I want to thank you again for taking the time to sit down with us. And hopefully, there's somebody, even if it's just one person listening that was on the edge about getting into shed dogs or even didn't even know about the program, that you've helped kind of enlighten them on how to get in it, and maybe we'll see them at next year's National.
Well, and that's true. And if we have any new listeners out there, one thing, like we said, is don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to reach out. You can find me on Facebook. You can send me a message. You can ask at most competitions. Somebody knows who I am, and I will gladly help anybody I can in any way I can, whether it's answer questions, give them a tip, show them something, whatever anybody needs, I'm more than willing to help. So all they got to do is just get a hold of me.
Well, we appreciate you being a resource to any of our new members, and thank you again for your time. I greatly appreciate it. I hope our listeners were able to glean a lot from this, and we appreciate all you guys tuning in.
All right. Thanks, Domenick.
Thank you for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow so you don't miss any of our new episodes or content.